Imagine your brother standing next to you at your mom's funeral, promising he'd take care of you. Now imagine finding out 3 months later that he gambled away every last cent of your $60,000 inheritance and didn't even apologize. If you've ever trusted someone and felt that trust crumble in your hands, this story might stay with you. I'm Claire Lawson, and this is what my own brother did to me. When our mother passed away, everything felt like a blur. She was the only real anchor in my life. At the funeral, my older brother Derek stood beside me, his arm around my shoulder, whispering, "I'll take care of you now, Claire. Don't worry." I believed him. He'd always been the charming one, dressed sharp, confident, the kind of man people listened to. Weeks after the funeral, Derek brought up the inheritance. The $60,000 mom had left for me. I had plans for that money. I wanted to go back to school, maybe start over somewhere fresh. But Derek said he had a better idea. He told me he knew a real estate flip that could double my money in a few months. He called it a guaranteed return, said I didn't need to stress. He'd handle everything. I was still grieving, still trying to sleep through the night without crying. So I nodded. I trusted him. 3 months passed. I kept checking in, asking how the project was going. He kept brushing me off. "Soon," he said. "It's in motion." Then one night, I got curious and did something I hadn't done before. I checked his social media. What I found made my stomach turn. Casino check-ins. Expensive dinners. Trips. None of it looked like real estate. It looked like partying. I confronted him. At first, he laughed. Then, like it wasn't even a big deal, he admitted it. He'd used the money to pay off gambling debts and cover bills. There was no investment, no property, just losses. I stood there in shock, my chest hollow. I asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" And all he said was, "You would have freaked out." No apology, no guilt. I walked away that night with nothing in my bank account and a hole in my heart. He didn't just steal my money. He stole the last piece of trust one had in him. And that was just the beginning. After what Derek did, I thought things couldn't get worse. But they did fast. With my inheritance gone, all my plans went up in smoke. I couldn't afford my rent anymore, and the little savings I had left were gone in weeks. I tried calling Derek again and again. At first, it went to voicemail. Then nothing. He blocked me. I remember the day I stood outside my apartment, holding a cardboard box filled with the last of my I had nowhere to go. No family left. Just pain, confusion, and a phone that felt heavier every time I looked at it. That's when Nina stepped in. She'd been my best friend since middle school, smart, loyal, and always real with me, even when I didn't want to hear it. When she heard what happened, she didn't ask questions. She just said, "Come stay with me. I've got space, sort of." That space turned out to be her laundry room, small, cold, and barely wide enough for a twin mattress. There were times I cried myself to sleep, listening to the washing machine rumble beside me. But I was grateful. At least I had a roof over my head, and someone who cared. Nina didn't hold back, though. One night while we were folding towels in her kitchen, she looked at me and said, "Claire, I love you, but Derek's always been like this. You just didn't want to see it." I hated hearing it, but deep down I knew she was right. All those times he made promises he never kept, all the times Mom covered for him, it was all there. I'd just ignored it. I started picking up whatever work I could find, retail shifts at a clothing store, walking dogs in the neighborhood, even babysitting when I could. It wasn't much, but it was something. I'd get home exhausted, my feet sore, but I kept going. Each paycheck, I'd save a few dollars. Slowly, quietly, no more trusting other people with my future. I started keeping a notebook where I wrote down goals. Get out of the laundry room. Start school again. Take my life back. I didn't have a big plan yet. Just quiet anger turning into determination. Derek had knocked me down, but I wasn't going to stay there. Not forever. It started like any other Thursday. I came home from my shift smelling like coffee and sweat, ready to collapse onto my mattress in the laundry room. Nina was already there, flipping through a stack of papers from her part-time job at a real estate attorney's office. She looked up with wide eyes and said, "You're not going to believe this." I dropped my bag and sat beside her. She slid a notice toward me. It was a foreclosure listing. My heart stopped when I saw the name, Derek Lawson. I read it twice. Derek's house, the one he bragged about owning outright, was going up for auction next week. I didn't know what to feel. Shock, satisfaction, confusion. Nina watched me closely. "Claire, this could be something. I mean, it's not every day karma hands you a bat." At first, I shook my head. It felt too big, too risky. I didn't even have real furniture, let alone enough money to buy a house. But something about it tugged at me. A part of me wanted to walk away and never hear Derek's name again. But another part, the part that remembered every night I cried myself to sleep, every missed opportunity, every promise he broke, needed something more. I stayed up that night doing research. Property auctions, loans, down payments. It was a long shot, but the numbers weren't impossible. Nina believed in me. She offered to help with the paperwork and even gave me a small amount she'd saved. With that and a modest loan from a local credit union, I had just enough to register for the auction. The day of the auction, my hands were shaking. I wore the nicest outfit I had, one of Nina's blazers, and walked into that courthouse like I belonged. I recognized Derek's address immediately. I didn't know if he even realized how close he was to losing it. Maybe he thought someone else would bail him out, but he didn't show. Not even once. When the bidding started, I waited. There were a few other offers, but I stayed focused. My heart pounded as I raised my number card. Again and again. And then, I won. Just like that. I stood there holding the winning bid slip, stunned. I had just bought my brother's house. The same brother who ruined my life without a second thought had unknowingly handed me a chance to take something back. He didn't even know yet. And I wasn't going to tell him, not until I was standing on that porch, keys in hand, watching his face when he realized the truth. I stood at the front door of Derek's house with the deed in one hand and a folded lease in the other. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. The last time I was here, Mom was still alive. The lawn was overgrown now, the paint on the front steps peeling. It looked tired, kind of like Derek himself. He answered the door in sweatpants and a stained t-shirt, blinking like he'd just woken up. For a second, he just stared at me, clearly not expecting to see me on his doorstep. "Claire," he said, confused. "What are you doing here?" I didn't say anything right away. I handed him the deed, the official stamp from the auction, clear as day. He glanced at it, frowning. "What is this?" "I bought the house," I said flatly, "at the auction last week." He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "You're joking." "No," I said. "I'm your new landlord." He actually laughed, a short, bitter kind of laugh. "You? Come on. Is this some weird payback thing?" I pulled out the lease. "Rent is now $2,000 a month, first and last due by Friday." His face dropped. "That's double what I was paying." "Correct," I said. "Consider it interest. You stole $60,000 from me, Derek. This isn't revenge. This is rent." He opened his mouth, probably to say something clever, but nothing came out. He looked like he was trying to understand how I, the quiet, forgettable sister who always stayed in the background, had just turned the tables on him. "You can pay me," I said calmly, "or pack your things. Your choice." For a moment, we just stood there. I saw the flash of anger rise in his eyes, but behind it was fear. The fear of someone who realized they'd finally run out of options. His fake charm didn't work on me anymore. I wasn't here to be manipulated. I was here to take back what he stole. Derek didn't have anywhere else to go, and we both knew it. After a long silence, he snatched the pen from my hand and signed the lease. He didn't say thank you. He didn't apologize. He just stormed back inside, leaving the door wide open behind him. I stepped onto the porch, breathing in the cool air. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. At first, Derek tried to act like nothing had changed, like he was still in control. He strutted around the house like he owned it, tossing me forced smiles whenever I stopped by for inspections or dropped off paperwork. He even tried calling me kiddo, like we were still close, like he hadn't stolen every cent Mom left for me. I didn't play along. I kept everything business. Within the first month, he was already late with rent. When I brought it up, he shrugged. "I've got it coming next week. Just a little delay. You know how things are." I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out a printed late notice and handed it to him. He glanced at it like it was a joke, but I stayed quiet. I wasn't here for another conversation. I was done giving him second chances. The truth is, Derek hadn't changed. He was still drinking, still gambling, maybe even more now. Some nights I'd drive by the house and see strange cars out front, loud music, voices spilling into the street. The lawn was still a mess. Trash piled up. Once, Nina came with me to check on a plumbing issue, and we found two of his friends passed out on the couch at noon. It was like watching a slow collapse, a house falling in on itself. But this time, I kept records. I took pictures. I saved emails. I logged every missed payment, every excuse, every mess left behind. Legal notices went out right on schedule. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was protecting what I had earned. Eventually, the charm wore off. Derek stopped pretending. He started getting angry. "Why are you doing this to me?" he snapped one afternoon when I came by to drop off a second. "You know I'm trying. I just need a little help." I looked at him, really looked. His eyes were tired, his shirt wrinkled, the air around him heavy with old beer and cigarette. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was just a man who had burned every bridge and expected someone else to build him a new one. "You had help," I said quietly. "You wasted it." He didn't argue. He just sat down on the porch steps and buried his face in his hand. It would have hurt once. But now, all I felt was distance. I wasn't here to rescue him. I wasn't here to fix anything. I was here to watch the truth finally catch up to him. And it was. It was a cloudy Sunday when I visited Mom's grave. The cemetery was quiet, The kind of quiet that makes you hear your own thoughts too clearly. I stood there, staring at the simple headstone with her name on it, not knowing what to say. A part of me hoped she could hear me. Another part wasn't sure I wanted her to. I knelt down and brushed away a few fallen leaves. "Hey, Mom," I whispered. "I guess you know what's been going on." The truth was, I didn't come for comfort. I came because I needed answers, or maybe peace. But standing there, memories rushed back. All those moments growing up when Derek got away with everything. The broken vase I didn't touch but got blamed for. The report card I worked so hard on that barely got a nod, while Derek failed classes and still got pizza nights and hugs. "You know Derek didn't deserve all that trust," I said softly. "But you gave it anyway. Every time." I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. I remembered sitting at the dinner table, listening to Mom make excuses for him. He's just going through a phase. He's got a lot of pressure. Meanwhile, I learned to stay quiet, to not cause trouble, to handle everything on my own. Now here I was, the quiet one turned landlord turned fighter. I thought about what I had done, about taking Derek's house, about making him pay. Was I just like him now? Cold, harsh. Maybe I had become something he couldn't manipulate anymore, and maybe that scared me too. "I'm not doing this to hurt him," I said. "I'm doing this because I finally had to choose myself." A wind passed through the trees, soft but sharp. I closed my eyes and let it wrap around me. This wasn't revenge. Not really. Revenge would have been loud and messy. But this was quiet, steady, honest. I didn't want to destroy Derek. I just wanted to stop letting him destroy me. I placed a small bouquet of wildflowers on the grave, her favorite. I stayed for a few minutes more, then stood up and walked away, not looking back. I didn't have closure, not completely, but I had something better. I had power, the kind you earn, not the kind someone gives you. And that was enough. It was a rainy Wednesday when Derek called me in a panic. "Claire, the pipes exploded. There's water everywhere. You've got to send someone right away or the place is gonna flood." His voice was frantic, almost too frantic, like he was performing. I paused, suspicious. I'd dealt with enough of his lies to know when something wasn't right. "I'll come take a look," I said. He hesitated. "I mean, you don't have to just call a plumber. I already got a quote." "I'll be there in 10 minutes, I said, already grabbing my key. When I arrived, he was standing outside with a bucket in hand, looking flustered. He waved me in, showing me a small puddle near the kitchen sink. I crouched down, inspected the pipe, and immediately saw the issue. Someone had unscrewed it on purpose. There was no damage, no explosion, just a cheap attempt to fake an emergency. I stood up slowly. "Seriously?" Derek looked away. "I was just trying to get ahead of it. It looked worse earlier." I crossed my arms. "You disconnected the pipe yourself." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. That was it. That was the moment something inside me switched off for good. I didn't even feel angry, just done. I pulled the eviction notice from my bag and placed it on the counter. "You have 30 days. I've already filed the paperwork." His face twisted. "What? Are you kidding me?" "You lied," I said. "Again. And this time you tried to scam me. I'm not doing this anymore." He exploded. "You're cruel. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Vindictive little." He stormed outside, yelling loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "My own sister is throwing me out. After everything I've done for her." People peeked from behind curtains and porches. A few stood on the sidewalk, watching the scene unfold. Derek kept yelling, waving his arms, trying to turn it into some kind of public performance. But no one stepped in. They just watched. I followed him out and stood quietly, arms folded. When he finally stopped screaming, I said clearly, "This isn't cruelty. This is just what accountability looks like, Derek." He stared at me, speechless. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I simply turned and walked away. The rain had started again, soft, steady drops tapping the sidewalk. Behind me, Derek's voice was silent. Maybe for the first time, he realized I wasn't the quiet little sister anymore. I was the woman who had nothing, and chose to rise anyway. After Derek moved out, the house felt heavy. Not with noise, but with memories, arguments, tension, silence that used to hang in the air like smoke. Still, I had the keys. And for the first time in years, the space was mine. It needed work, a lot of it. The walls were stained, the carpet smelled like old beer, and every corner seemed to carry a piece of his neglect. But I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I couldn't afford a crew, so I did it all myself. I started with the walls, painting them a soft, warm cream that made the rooms feel lighter. I scrubbed every surface, replaced broken tiles, and slowly brought life back into each room. Nina came by on weekends to help. We laughed, blasted music, and danced around with paint rollers like we were kids again. It was exhausting, but healing. Every brushstroke felt like I was covering old wounds. Every screw I tightened, every drawer I fixed, it was like reclaiming little pieces of myself. By the end of the second month, it finally felt like a home. The kitchen was my favorite part. I'd always loved baking, ever since I was little. Mom taught me how to make cinnamon rolls and sugar cookies, but I'd never had a real space to make it my own. Now I did. I cleared off the counters, bought a secondhand mixer, and launched a small online baking business from my phone. It started with a few orders from Nina's friends, then coworkers, then strangers from social media. People loved the homemade touch. I called it quiet craving. It wasn't just about money. It was about building something of my own, something that didn't rely on anyone else's promises. I woke up early to bake, filled the house with the smell of chocolate and vanilla, and fell asleep knowing every part of this life was mine. The house that once held so much pain, where Derek had taken everything from me, now stood for something else. It was peaceful, warm, safe. It didn't just shelter me. It reflected me. This wasn't the revenge people expected. There was no dramatic ending, no screaming match. Just silence, hard work, and slow, steady joy. I had taken back my life and turned it into something beautiful. It had been months since I'd seen Derek. Life had settled into a quiet rhythm, baking orders in the morning, deliveries in the afternoon, and evenings spent on the couch with a warm blanket and the smell of vanilla still in the air. The house no longer reminded me of him. It just felt like mine. Then one night, around 11 p.m., I stopped at a gas station after a late delivery. I was tired, hoodie pulled tight against the cold, waiting for the tank to fill when I heard a voice behind me. "Well, look who it is." I turned slowly. Derek. He looked different, thinner, pale. His hands trembled slightly as he held a cup of gas station coffee. He wore a name badge clipped to a stained security jacket. The smile on his face tried to be confident, but his eyes gave him away. They were tired, like the charm had finally worn off, even for himself. "Still living the dream, sis?" he asked, smirking like old times. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. This was the same man who once stood at Mom's funeral and promised to take care of me. The same man who gambled away everything I had. And now here he was. Not a villain, not even really a threat anymore. Just a sad man on a cold night, clinging to whatever pride he had left. I finally said, "No dreams. Just bills, rent, and peace." "You remember rent, right?" He let out a short, forced laugh. "You always did have a smart mouth." I shrugged. Maybe I finally learned to use it. There was a long pause. He looked like he wanted to say more. Maybe explain, maybe blame, maybe apologize. But nothing came out. And I didn't need anything from him anymore. Not answers, not closure, not forgiveness. We stood there under the humming lights of the gas station for another moment, the silence louder than either of us expected. "Take care, Derek," I said, turning back to my car. "Claire," he called after me, but I didn't stop. I got in, shut the door, and drove off without looking back. There was no dramatic music, no slow-motion moment, just the quiet realization that I was free. Free from waiting for him to change, free from hoping for something better. That night, I went home, lit a candle, and sat in my kitchen with a warm cookie and a deep breath. Closure didn't come from his apology. It came from me, walking away, and meaning it. The evening was calm. A soft breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of vanilla and cinnamon from the oven. Candles flickered on the coffee table, casting a warm glow across the living room walls. The house felt still, not empty but peaceful. I sat with a notebook in my lap and a pen in hand, something I hadn't done in years. It wasn't for work or a to-do list. This time it was for her. At the top of the page I wrote, "Dear Mom." The words came slowly, but they came. I don't know if you'd be proud of me or disappointed. Maybe both. But I did what I had to do. I paused, listening to the soft ticking of the clock and the gentle hum of the oven. The smells reminded me of childhood, of baking cookies with Mom on rainy afternoons, of Derek sneaking bites and laughing when she pretended to scold him. He made his choices, Mom. And I finally made mine. I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping he'd be someone else. I let go of the version of him you always believed in. There was no anger in my writing, no bitterness, just truth. I didn't destroy him. I didn't scream or plot or hurt him the way he hurt me. I just stopped helping him destroy me. I stood up. I claimed something. I found myself in a place I thought I'd lost a long time ago. The oven dinged, a soft and perfect sound. I smiled and didn't rush to get up. The cookies could wait. I kept writing. I don't forgive him, not yet. Maybe not ever. But I don't need to. That's not the point. Forgiveness isn't some prize I have to give away. It's not required for healing. Sometimes healing is just choosing peace. I set the pen down and closed the notebook. I didn't need to send the letter. I just needed to say it, even if only on paper. I walked into the kitchen and pulled the tray of cookies out of the oven. The golden edges, the smell, the warmth, it all felt like home. My home. No dramatic music played. No sudden burst of emotion. Just the quiet rhythm of a life finally my own. I poured a glass of milk, sat down on the couch, and took a bite of a cookie, soft, sweet, warm. And in that moment, I knew I was okay. What would you have done in Claire's place? walked away like she did, or given Derek one more chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your take. And if you like stories that hit close to the heart, make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.